Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for the first episode of this podcast. Today, I have a guest with me, Chrissy Wolfe, who is going to take us through her journey being diagnosed with breast cancer. How are you today, Chrissy?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. So, when did you get diagnosed with breast cancer?
Oh, let's see. Maybe it was in July of 2009.
What type were you diagnosed with?
I was diagnosed with estrogen receptor positive breast cancer, um, type 2, grade 3. So that was based on the size of the tumor that they found. I went through 6 months of chemo. I did 3 different types of chemo, 18 treatments total.
What was the process like when you got diagnosed with that? Did you go in, were you like of age and started going in for mammograms, or was there concern that brought up why you went in?
I was 29 and I had lost weight pretty significantly over the course of a month. And my mom pulled me aside and she's like, "Are you all right? What's going on?" I said, "I'm fine. I mean, I'm just doing me, living life." And one morning I woke up and I just kind of like rubbed my arm past it and I could feel a lump. And I thought, what the hell is that? About the size of maybe a walnut. And I mentioned it to my mom. She said that it runs in my family that we have like caffeine lumps. So just to check it out next time I have a doctor's appointment. No real big scare, nothing super worrisome then. And I made a doctor's appointment, went in, and I had told my doctor, "Hey, by the way, my mom wants to check this. Like, she's concerned, I'm not, whatever." And as soon as she touched it, she said, "I'm going to send you for a mammogram." And I'm like, "Okay, do I schedule that up front with the office?" And she goes, "No, you're going over today." And I thought, okay, that's kind of urgent. I still wasn't stressed then, though. So I went over to do the mammogram, and the lady that did it, she had worked in the radiology for, I don't know, 15, 20 years at that point. And she brought me an American Cancer Society pamphlet. And I kind of looked at her concerned, like, "Okay, can you tell me what's up?" And she goes, "I can't tell you anything. You have to wait for radiology to read the results and then contact your doctor." And I'm like, "Yeah, but she just handed me a pamphlet. So what are you thinking?" She said, "Diary, you want to go ahead and call, tell them what you're going through, that you've just received a mammogram, and just kind of see what they have out there, and we'll see what direction it goes." So then after that, I had a doctor's appointment. She referred me to an oncologist. The oncologist did a biopsy. Biopsy come back that it was cancerous. And then everything just got swept up so fast. Like, that was in July, and I had surgery in October. By November, I started chemo, did chemo for 6 months, kind of hibernated for the winter. And it just seemed like everything happened so fast. It almost kind of froze time for a minute because I really just didn't know what to think of it.
What was running through your brain the moment that you got that diagnosis? What were some of the first things that you thought about?
To be honest with you, and it might sound silly, I'd never really known anyone. Nobody in my family that I was close to had had cancer. So in my mind, I went straight to the movie Still Magnolias, which she doesn't even have cancer. She has kidney issues. And that was all I could think of was Julia Roberts' part in Still Magnolias and how she ended up dying. And I thought, I'm 29, I'm too young to die. I've got 2 children. They were still in grade school at the time. And like I said, my world just froze. I was just in shock for so long. I just kind of went with all the protocols and everything that they did. And I took my grandma with me and my mom with me to all of the appointments up in Grant and Riverside. Both checked me. They do what they call a second opinion clinic, and they asked if I wanted to do so. And I thought, well, if you're asking me if I need a second opinion, then I guess it's not going to hurt. So when I went up there to do the second opinion clinic, they told me that the type of cancer I had and at the rate it had been growing for that tumor to be the size that it was, it started when my body started producing estrogen in my early teen years. You first become a woman. So the biopsy showed that it was estrogen fed. So the more estrogen my body has, the bigger the tumor could grow. So the protocol then was to go ahead and just do um, to, to have a mastectomy done. But the second opinion clinic told me that based on the size of my tumor and the findings from just the early biopsies and stuff, that it had 40% chance that it would come back in the same breast if I just removed the tumor. If I removed the breast, hold on, I got that backwards. 70% chance it would come back in the same breast if I removed the tumor. 50% chance it would come back in the other breast if I removed the whole breast. 30% chance and under if I took both of them. And I thought, well, I don't even know if I'm going to make it through chemo, so let's just take them both. And I looked at my grandma and I looked at my mom kind of to see what their expression was hearing all this. And my grandma kind of nodded, go ahead. So that was the choice I made. I had a bilateral mastectomy that October and started chemo in November.
So you said that you had kids still in grade school at the time that all of this happened. So what was it like trying to take care of them and, take care of yourself at the same time?
They took care of me. They probably remember a little bit more about it. It took me a couple years that to go back through pictures of Christmas and stuff to even remember any of the chain of events that had happened. Um, I slept a lot throughout chemo. It really zapped me. So I didn't eat a whole lot. I mostly stayed in bed. My daughter, whenever I'd come out in the living room with them after school, she would usually sit behind me in the chair with a lint roller and roll the hair as it was coming out.
What would you say that the hardest part from either diagnosis to treatment, the hardest part of that whole experience was for you?
Learning to be an advocate for yourself. As much as you want to trust your doctors, and I'm not saying anything ever went wrong, or I wouldn't be here. I am completely, eternally grateful and thankful for every doctor, every nurse, everyone who had any part in taking care of me during that journey. The hardest part was probably just the shock and learning how to be my own advocate. You feel like when you go to the doctor, you've got your chart and they kind of keep track of everything that's going on. But sitting during chemo and watching other people go through different types of cancer and different types of treatment, it really made me take notice of the types of things that I was going to go through and what I needed to look out for and the questions I needed to be asking. And there is absolutely no question that is a stupid question.
So you said that no one in your family that you were immediately close to had that or dealt with that before, but either during the journey or beforehand going through treatment and everything, did you find any maybe friends or talk to anybody that had had it before to get your questions answered, or were you purely relying on, your mom and your grandma and then the doctors?
Yeah, it was me and it was being an advocate for myself asking questions. I didn't know anybody. They had a cancer walk at a fairgrounds when I lived up north. And this was a couple years later. So I went to it, and everyone, if you knew someone or you had been through it, you signed a paper bag and then they lit candles. And we did like a nighttime walk around the track in memory of people who are either going through, had been through it, passed away, or even caregivers. They give us glow sticks originally when we come in and signed up. And I remember sitting in the grandstands and they said, if you have been directly affected by cancer, go ahead and crack your glow stick. So we were kind of peppered throughout the crowd and we're holding up our glow sticks. And then they said, if you have been a caregiver for someone, crack your glow stick. And by the end of it, it seemed like everybody's glow sticks were lit because they had either directly been a caregiver or it had been a mom, an aunt, a grandparent. And the statistics at that point was 1 in 3 people will have some type of cancer in your life.
You went to the second opinion clinic and did that and decided to get the double mastectomy. Was that like an on the spot? Did you decide right there? You was like, okay, yeah, we're gonna do this. Did it take you time to think about it? Were you worried about complications
No,
with anything?
no. That's why I said, like, I spent most of it in shock because I really just didn't know. I had no clue what to expect. I mean, still Magnolias. That was not even close to being about cancer. And all I could think of was Shelby died, in the movie. And I just thought, I'm too young to die. Like, I don't even know what's happening right now. How sick am I going to be during chemo? I've heard awful things about people going through chemo and how horrible it was and how hard for them and how it took a toll on their body and other organs, and it just didn't seem like the survival rate was very high at all. So I didn't I didn't have a fear of dying. I just didn't know what to expect. So I didn't sit and dwell on it necessarily. My mom told me that I can't live like that. You can't stay inside and hide from everything because you still got to live regardless, and you still got to get up every day. You still just you got to have faith. And I thought to myself, yeah, I really just don't know what's going to happen. So I just take it one day at a time.
What was your chemo experience like? Did you have any of the bad symptoms that other people had? Did it affect anything else, or was it pretty smooth sailing for that? I know you said you were tired a lot.
Chemo was very rough. It was hard on the body. I had a portacath put in my left chest wall after I had the breast removed. To put a catheter inside of my chest, so that's where I was to do the chemo through. So it wasn't a stick every time in the arms or anything like that. That made it easier. That surgery honestly probably was harder to recover from because they took a lot of tissue out in order to make room for that catheter. And that was much more sore to heal from than having the breast tissue removed. The breast tissue being removed was mostly about making sure all the drainage happened and that I didn't get any infections from the drain tubes or the incisions. And it seemed to heal pretty well. But going through chemo, I sat through chemo with about 13 different people I got to know over those 6 months, varieties of types of cancers. And I can promise you today, I'm the only one out of those 13 people that are still here. So I watched how it affected other people, their family, their grandchildren. I heard stories of what was going on at home, medical bills, things that people struggled with. And it was hard to watch others go through it, but it took my mind off of what I was going through. I wasn't so distracted with a woe is me kind of feeling about everything. I got really invested in listening to other people and watching what they were going through. I personally gained a lot of weight going through chemo, and I thought that was weird because I thought, if anything, I'll thin out a little bit, and hey, this is a weird bonus. But no, I gained weight. I asked my oncologist, I said, what's up with that? He said, that's a good sign. He said, that's a healthy thing for you. So I just kind of shrugged and accepted it. In the long run, the the one thing that the chemo took a toll on most, I would say, was probably my teeth. It really just zapped everything out of my teeth, and they become like an M&M shell. They were very easy to just pinch and crumble. So I lost the majority of my teeth during chemo and after chemo.
I know for me personally, and I imagine other people that, haven't had family members gone through this or haven't gone through this themselves. What is the process of chemo like? You said you had the port there. Do you just sit there? Is it like a kind of like liquid or like gas that goes through the port, or what exactly is that process like when you're getting chemo?
The port was for IV. I had to have a specific size gauge needle go in because I did 3 types of chemo, and the different chemos had to go at a different rate. One chemo I did 4 rounds of, and it zapped it. That was my first round of chemo. It hit me really hard, and that's what definitely took my hair. I lost my hair because of that one. And then the additional chemo, the other 2 chemos were kind of, well, 2 chemos, and then one of them was a white blood cell or a white blood cell boost. Um, I can't remember the name of it, but it was to help build my blood count back up. That way, I didn't get super sick throughout it. So I would go through chemo on Monday, get the Neulasta. That's what it was. I would get the Neulasta shot on Tuesday, and the Neulasta shot seemed to be what made me most sick. And then, Monday roll back around and I'm starting to feel better, go through chemo, feel okay for the day when I come home. And then Tuesday, when I went in to get that Neulasta shot for my blood count, it really it was like having the flu hit you really hard. I was tired. I was not hungry. I just wanted to sleep. My body was achy.
After you'd gotten the chemo treatment and you were good and you had the double mastectomy and everything, and you were in remission, did it ever come back, or have you been in remission the entire time since that's all been done?
I've been in remission this entire time. I did 5 years of checkups regularly after chemo. That was the protocol. And then after that, I had my port removed. I had the port for a couple years to make sure that I stayed in remission. And then once we were into a safe zone, I went ahead and had the port removed.
So, since you said that during it you were mainly just shocked and the entire thing was just like, okay, let's go along with what we're doing, you didn't really know what was going on. After you were in remission and you had your checkups, and it was like, okay, for the moment, we're good. It doesn't seem like it's coming back. After that had time to settle and you realized that, you made it and you were fortunate enough to heal from that, what went through your mind then after all that was done?
The grieving process began a little bit. I didn't have anyone to really talk to. There were a few support groups, but those support groups were mostly older people who had been caregivers for their significant others. So I was awfully young to be in any of those groups. Not that it wasn't relevant, it was just hard to connect with other people. I hadn't known anyone as young as me to go through anything like that. So to actually talk to people and share experiences about going through chemo or how I felt or, what kind of foods you don't tolerate well now that you've got a sensitive stomach. I just didn't have anyone to really share that with. So I went through a little bit of a grieving process for myself. Didn't know how to process everything that had just happened. I was frozen in time while it was all happening, and now that it's done and everything's good and you can go back to work, I just I felt lost. I didn't know who to talk to. Counseling didn't really seem to know how to touch on it either, I guess. So my mom and my grandma pretty much told me just, be grateful, count your blessings and move forward.
What were some big changes that you noticed from before you had breast cancer to after you went into remission?
Vitamin deficiencies are a big, big factor. Chemo really takes a toll on certain organs. Um, I was extremely low in vitamin D and I felt sluggish and tired all the time. And then I had gone to an oncology appointment probably, I don't know, 2 years after all of everything had been said and done. And she had done some blood work and she said, "We're going to put you on some vitamin D." And I thought, okay. And after being on 2 weeks of a really high dose of vitamin D, I felt amazing. And I thought, well, oh my God, like what? I didn't realize that something that simple could be such a life change. I felt good. I felt better. I wanted to go back to work. I wanted to get up and do things.
So, what was it like for you going back to work after all of that had happened?
Um, it was just part of life. I had to make money. We had to pay bills. We had things that we needed to do to provide. My family did throw together a Chinese auction, which we had at our local AMVET, and we raised $5,000 toward my medical treatment and some of my bills at home. My landlord was very generous and knocked off part of our rent throughout that process. And then once I was back to work, we paid full rent again. The community come out in a big way for me. People were still bringing things through the door as we were auctioning stuff off. It was amazing to see so many people come out and so many people be supportive and just it was incredible. I mean, to raise $5,000 out of a Chinese auction, that was a lot of money then.
When you had the Chinese auction, and that happened to get the money, what were you expecting out of that? I imagine you weren't expecting that big of an outcome from that. What probably were you expecting, and how much did that exceed your expectations?
Things that people continue to show up with. Somebody had the Ohio State Buckeyes at the time. Kroger's had donated a team picture of the Ohio State Buckeyes at the stadium, and they were signed by the team. Things like that. People brought in all kinds of incredible stuff to donate. Anchor Hawking donated a ton of glassware to auction off. Um, Geez, I can't even remember most of it. We had a lottery tree, things like that. I guess in my mind, I just thought it was going to be, I don't know, like a little indoor yard sale kind of auction. Just some random things that people had around the house that might get a dollar here, a dollar there. But people really bid on things. The Ohio State framed photograph with signatures, That went for a couple $100. And to hear people continue to bid on things and really see people open their wallets to help was amazing. We, my partner at the time, and my mom and my grandma and my aunt, we all made fudge. We made white chocolate fudge and, put some red food coloring in it, dyed it pink. So it was pink fudge, and we sold fudge. Uh, it was incredible to see everybody come together, though. There was so many people that would come up and talk to me, give me hugs. It was hard to keep track of everything. I was very shy about it. I didn't, I hadn't really known anyone going through chemo or cancer at the time. So to see everybody just flooding in and coming together and raising money, was pretty incredible. I just stepped back, still shocked.
Yeah, it's definitely a great moment when you realize that there is a whole community there that will back up someone when they're going through something.
I only expected a couple $100 maybe, gas money, things like that. I would have never ever dreamt that we would have raised thousands of dollars.
So after treatment and after getting into remission and everything's, good now, when you like what is it like falling back into normal life, I guess, worrying about, the bills again and going to work and just having a seemingly normal life after going through that? Was it hard to fall back into routine, or did the shock just kind of overweigh it and you were like, yeah, okay, we're back to normal, like let's get this going?
Well, after the surgery and before chemo started, I knew I needed to continue to make money before Christmas, for Christmas. I worked as a roofer, and I helped a friend of mine who gave me some work with him. He had a couple roofing jobs, side jobs that he had, and he let me work with him. And I collected enough money for Christmas. And then because I was going through chemo already at the time for Christmas, we had the people donated bicycles and different items for the kids for Christmas. I think the hardest thing for me was staying in town. Like we moved up north for a little while, up toward like Mount Gilead, Ohio, because everywhere I would go, everyone would be like, "How you feeling?" And not that that was insensitive, but it made me question myself. Like I don't know, like my finger hurts. I hope it's not anything serious, So every time somebody would ask me how I was feeling, I just would panic and think, I don't know, like, is any little pain significant? Is it something to be worried about? Do I need to go check? So we moved up north away from everyone for a little while. And I got some factory jobs up there, worked a couple different factory jobs, and just pretty much went on with it.
So besides when people would ask you and then you would get curious, like, oh, well, am I really feeling okay? Did you have that when people wouldn't ask you anything? Like if you were at home and, maybe you had a cough or a sore throat or something, or maybe you felt extra achy one day, did that also kind of make you panic a little bit or make you worried? Or was that just kind of like normal and you brushed it aside?
That was just normal. Like, I mean, if I had a cough, I probably really didn't think too much of it. The thing that I experienced after chemo and after the surgery was a lot of nerve damage. I mean, I was on nerve pain medication for quite a while because it took a long time for the feeling in my chest to come back. And I still have a significant section that I don't have feeling. But the nerve pain was a different type of pain. It's not a headache. It's not I smashed my finger or I got a paper cut. It was a new pain to me I had never felt before, to have that kind of neuropathy pain. I remember feeling at one point the pain kind of dulled down, but the nerve endings had begun to heal, and it felt kind of like little spiders tickling me all the time, and that drove me nuts. But that meant that everything was healing and everything was going good, and the pain was starting to subside, and it was just a tingling sensation. But I remember thinking it was just so weird. It just felt like I had little things crawling all over my chest all the time. It drove me nuts.
Whew. I could not deal with that. I'd be like itching and scratching or like trying to get it off of me. That sounds really annoying.
Right. And then to have the numbness also, there was like I could scratch at it, but there was no relief. There was no, you got an itch on your arm, you itch it, and you feel relief, or you scratch your back and you kind of feel better. There was no relief. It was just a constant tingling sensation, and it drove me nuts. But it wasn't a pain either, so there was nothing to do about it. It just continued on for a while.
So I know that you said after you'd gotten into remission and you had appointments for 5 years, and then you had a few years with the port still, and then you got that taken out. How many doctor's visits do you have now? Now that you've been in remission for a minute, how often do you have to go to get checkups or go be seen by your doctor?
Probably honestly haven't been seen in the past 12 years. No, that can't be right. Um, After the 5 year mark, there was no, there was nothing really to have to monitor. They had taken some lymph nodes out in addition to the breast. That was just an extra precaution because of the way your lymph nodes drain into your breast, your milk ducts, and things like that. They took some extra lymph nodes out, which were into my armpit area, and that was rather painful itself. But that was pretty much it. I haven't really. Oh, I know it sounds bad, but I can't really remember the last time I've had any sort of a checkup that was related to it.
Do you get nervous about it anymore now that it's been so long, or are you just kind of like, you know what, I'm good, I think I'm good, or does it still make you nervous?
In the very back of my mind, I would be lying if I said it didn't. It wasn't back there subconsciously worrying about it. But I've experienced other things in life. I did hit a period in life where I got into drugs for a little while and kind of lost myself. And after going through that addiction type thing, having been through cancer, I just I'm in my 40s, and I kind of feel like I'm living my best life right now, and there's no real time to worry about it. I've got 3 grandkids. I've got another grandbaby on the way. I'm very blessed. I have everything that I need, and everything's better than it's ever been. Everything's blessed. I don't have time to worry about it. I won't let myself indulge in worrying about it. I do make sure I have regular doctor's appointments. I have checkups every year. So I make sure I take care of my health, but I don't let myself think about it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, after going through something of that level and, being fortunate enough to make it out and now have this other life created, you don't want to ruin everything by worrying about it forever. And it's like, if you're good at your doctor's appointments, then, you're good.
Right. I have a gym membership. I went and I did the initial, I'm not sure what it's called. They go in, they check your body fat percentage and things like that. And they told me that I have very healthy organs. Um, I had a cyst on my kidney. They checked that. It was not cancerous. I had I don't know where it was kind of a cyst on my thyroid. They went and did a biopsy. It was benign. So after going through a couple of scares here and there, knowing that these things were found on scans and then they come back benign, I just accepted that I'm okay. I've got a strong heart. All of my checkups have come back good, and I'm just going to keep pushing forward. I'm more likely to die of choking on a donut, to be honest.
Is there anything else that you would like to add or share about your experience?
Um, I just there was when I did the initial when all the tests was happening and everything like that, and I had found out I had cancer. They did a counseling session for the family, and at first that felt off-putting, like almost like you're about ready to make your own funeral plans kind of thing. When they're telling you they should bring your family in and talk to them too. So I didn't know what to think when we got there, but they took the kids in and they explained how I was going to appear to them, how I would be sick and the kind of medicine and how it was going to take a toll on my body, but it was for me to get better. They gave the kids these little books about a bear family and how the mom had gotten sick and the little bears helped take care of things at the house and things like that. And I thought that was great. I thought that was really wholesome that they included the kids in that part of the journey. The kids got little homemade teddy bears. There were Blankets that you would get during chemo that you could take home that were crocheted and donated by different places in the community. Because chemo was like 6 to 8 hours at a time, and you pretty much just sit in a hard plastic recliner. Some people sleep, some people would watch TV, some people would do crossword puzzles. One lady wrote poems. I ended up getting a copy of that poem and I printed it onto. I did my own little home poster board, homemade poster board, printed that poem on it.
What hospital or where was that they did the counseling sessions with the kids?
Grant Hospital is where I went through everything. I did the second opinion at Riverside. Then when Riverside concurred with everything Grant had originally said, then I figured I would stick with Grant. And then I was fortunate enough, at that time I lived in Hocking County, but on the border of Vinton County, out off of 56. And instead of going to Columbus for all of my oncology appointments weekly and worrying about the gas and the traffic and the time and getting the kids home from school and off to school and things like that, my oncologist actually also came to Athens Hospital to do treatments for people down there. And he said, you can come to either office to do with, you know, do any of your treatments. You can come to Columbus, you can go to Athens. And we were right there on 56. So we just zipped down to Athens, 6 to 8 hours of chemo, come home, sleep for most of the week, start to feel better. So I had to go get my new last shot. But I was really fortunate to not have to do so much traveling, to not have to fight traffic, to not have to fight to find parking, pay for parking.
Yeah,
It was nice to
driving
be
and
able to do
traffic
that.
can definitely be crazy in Columbus, especially around OSU or any hospital up there.
Oh, yeah. That would have been so much more anxiety added to everything. And thankfully, I didn't have to go through that.
Would you say that the counseling sessions definitely like helped your kids more understand? I feel like that's very beneficial and I really liked that they do that. I never knew that they did that. Cuz I feel like that just, instead of you being sick, having to try to, explain it the best way you can to your kids, you have someone else, a professional that's like, "Hey, this is happening. It is scary, but like this you're going through it, your mom's going through it and you're here." And did you notice that it helped them at all trying to navigate through that, because being so
Oh,
young, that can definitely be scary, seeing your parents go through something like that.
I think it was a wonderful thing for them. They were amazing throughout all of it. They would come in and check on me if I was asleep and my blanket was off my shoulder. My daughter would come in and pull the blanket up. My son would come in and see if I was thirsty or hungry, or try to take the dog out. I had a little wiener dog at the time, and she was my solid. She stayed in bed with me the whole time. She didn't want to get up and go eat. She didn't want to go out. She didn't want the kids to play with her. She hibernated with me through those 6 months. She was my little ride or die fur friend. But the kids were amazing with it. They were very kind, they were very sweet, they were very sensitive, they were they were on top of it. I mean, they were considerate and just anything I needed, and they were thoughtful about things and would draw me things. I remember my daughter drew a bunch of little animals, and I had cut them out, and I could take them around a little cooler that I would take to work after that. After all the treatment and everything, when I went back to work at the factories, I ended up cutting those little animals out and taking them to my cooler because they got me a breast cancer cooler.
Do you have any advice or just any words of wisdom for any, because you said you felt not necessarily alone, but kind of just you were so young, and you go to these support groups and things and they're all older people who have gone through that. Do you have any advice for maybe any other younger people that have also struggled through this, or maybe are going to struggle through this, maybe it runs in their family? Just advice for people that were younger or maybe even the same age as you when you went through all of this.
Don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to ask people if they have time to talk to you about things, even if they don't have anything to really reciprocate because they don't know anything about it themselves. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask for someone to listen, because your fears and your anxiety and everything that you experience, all of the emotional roller coaster, you deserve the right to share that with somebody, even if they don't know how to help you through it. don't be afraid to ask for somebody to talk to you. I mean, there would be people in the store that would just kind of stop and talk to me a little bit, and oh, I knew someone that went through this, and it wasn't ever a comparison that they knew someone that went through it worse or whatever. It was a connection. People crave a way to try to connect with me after I had gone through everything. But initially, when I didn't know how to feel about any of it, my advice would be don't be afraid to ask to talk to somebody. Don't be afraid to reach out to people. Um, I myself will always offer anyone who's ever gone through anything like that. I am here to be an ear to listen. I've known a few people since then. I have a friend from high school. She recently was just diagnosed. We haven't talked since probably eighth grade. And I messaged her and I said, hey, if you want to talk, if you have questions, or if you just have a rough day and you want to vent, I am here. You know, we don't even have to compare experiences, but I'm here to listen because what might feel like an irrational fear, I mean, you can't help it. None of your feelings are invalid. There's so much that your mind, it's hard to sort things out. It's scary, it's stressful, but don't be afraid to ask questions either. And make sure you take care of anything that you're doing. If you have to write it down, if you have to take your phone and record things or anything like that, make sure you keep track of everything for yourself. You have to be your own advocate. There was a time during my chemo that they had come in and told one nurse told a lady, you're about ready to go. And then another one come in and she said, okay, we're starting your second round. And I kind of looked over and I thought, you told two different things by two different nurses. So as they got ready to take her IV out, I spoke up. I said, hey, no. That lady, the other nurse that come in, told her she had another treatment still. And she goes, no, she doesn't. I said, just go check your chart first. Why put her through that? Go check your chart. And the lady left the room. She come back and she goes, you're right. You do. You have another treatment. So we got about another hour. And the old lady looked over at me and she said, thank you for paying attention. So everyone just tries to do their job. I know the nurses, it's got to be hard for them. They see people come through at different stages and different types of cancers and stuff. The medical field's got to be you've got to be tough to work in the medical field,
Most
but definitely be
definitely.
your own advocate. I wrote things down. I had what we called my breast cancer Bible. It was a booklet that they originally gave to me that was describing the exercises, the types of cancer, things like that. It was issued by Ohio Medical. It was a pink book, and then it had room in there for notes and all of the business cards that I got for the different doctors and stuff. I taped them inside. I wrote phone numbers down. I wrote medications down, the milligrams, things like that. I kept track of it, and we called it my breast cancer Bible.
That's definitely a good way to keep track of things, or just, any book or anything at all, being able to keep track of everything.
It takes a toll on your memory. And like I said, I hibernated for about 6 months. So I was still participating in life with my children and, how was school today. But it took a couple of years to go back through and look at pictures after my mom had gotten them developed then. And I looked back and I thought, I do remember that now. But if you had asked me, what did we get for Christmas that year? About the only thing I could really remember about Christmas that year is that we had bikes donated to us for the kids. And I thought that was pretty incredible. Everywhere I went, though, I pretty much just took a blanket with me and slept on the couch, whether it was my mom's, my grandma's, my friend's baby shower. I said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be very much fun. I'm here. I'm here. I'm here to be supportive, happy for you, but I'm going to go take a nap on your couch while we're doing this kind of thing.
Well, thank you so much for coming on here to talk about your experience and, your journey going through that. I know it's definitely a sensitive topic, and, hopefully someone will listen to this and get some advice, or maybe, be able to look at this and look at what we talked about and, think back on, their own experiences. And it's great that you got into remission and that you've been fortunate enough to, be at this point where, your life is pretty much back to normal and, you're living.
I'm happy. I'm the happiest I've been pretty much ever. I've got grandkids. I've got my own home. I've got a wonderful job that I love. I've got my health. I have things that I go out and do and I enjoy. And I couldn't be more blessed. I'm very grateful. There was a time where I was scared and didn't know if I would make it through the 6 months of chemo. And now to look back on everything, it seems like it's been so long ago. And when you're originally diagnosed, you just can't get past the shock of what's going to happen. So to look back now and kind of forget how things were, it's a blessing.
I want to give a big thank you to everyone for tuning in for the first episode here, and a big thank you to Chrissy for coming on here and sharing her journey going through diagnosis and then being in remission for so long. And hopefully some other women will listen to this and feel maybe less alone or feel more seen and understood, especially if you're younger and going through something like this. It really can happen at any time. Genetics play into effect and all that stuff. So if you're a young woman, definitely know that you are not alone in this journey if you are also fighting this battle. This is the first of many episodes of Hardy Hills, a podcast that takes place here in the Hocking Hills. I wanted to start off strong with being able to let a few women get their stories out there during Breast Cancer Awareness Month. There's going to be many types of videos on here, from other people sharing their stories for maybe other awareness months to weekly police reports reading off of their Facebook page, featuring small businesses, all that type of stuff. There'll also be, some fun, random episodes of just stuff that's going on, funny stories, stuff like that. So make sure to stick around and like and follow. And I am your host, Miley Bowles, and I will see you guys next time.